Yo, if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance that you're deep into anime. Maybe you even identify yourself as a full-time weeb. I get it. Anime is inspiring, funny, full of vibrant art, and it lets you escape into splendid worlds of fantasy. Or maybe you just appreciate good animation, character design, or cool storytelling. Same goes for the video games, those JRPGs that are just so fun to dive into. The point is, we all love anime for different reasons. But here's the brutal truth. Anime, especially certain parts of the fandom, can lead you down a slippery slope that feeds a porn addiction in ways you might not even realize. What starts as an innocent love for well-drawn characters and exciting storylines can quickly turn into something much darker. Today we're going to break down how anime and its culture play a huge role in keeping you trapped in porn addiction. And by the end of this video, you'll see how the arts, the fandoms, and even those innocent waifus crushes can mess with your mind. Number 1, the disturbing subculture of anime. Let's start by talking about what we all know, but often don't admit. Anime is a rabbit hole. Once you're in deep. And it's not always as innocent as it seems. At first, you might just be watching a popular show, enjoying the characters and storylines. But if you spend enough time in the anime community, you start seeing another side of it. A side that's much more suggestive, with some obscene fan arts and doujinshis lurking just a few clicks away. Japanese culture has a unique way of blending fantasy with sexuality, and it doesn't take long before you're diving into these darker corners of the internet. Before you know it, you've started looking for ways to see your favorite waifus in, let's say, less innocent settings. This rabbit hole feeds right into the structure of your addiction. Just like regular pornography, the more you watch, the more extreme your tastes become. You start craving more hardcore or niche content to get the same hit of dopamine. And guess what? The anime world has endless niches for you to explore. From standard fan service to weirdly disturbing stuff that you'd never think of seeking out in real life. But your brain doesn't make a distinction between watching industrial content and watching anime content. The dopamine hit still happens, and the addiction still deepens. Over time, the brain becomes desensitized, needing more extreme stimuli to feel satisfied, which pushes you further down the rabbit hole of bizarre and disturbing content. This is when you get trapped in deviant niches, always looking for something new to satisfy that craving. Number 2, the waifu culture. If you spent time in the anime world, you've probably got a waifu, or 10, that you're really attached to. And that may be cute and silly in the beginning, but this culture is all about forming emotional attachments to fictional characters. It's fun and harmless at first, until it isn't. Because the more attached you become to these fictional characters, the more disconnected you become from real-life relationships. You end up replacing real human connection with a fantasy, and over time, your brain starts to lose interest in real intimacy and relationship. Plus, this fake harem you're building in your mind will lead you to seek out more and more content, feeding into the same addiction cycle as regular porn, but with the added twist that it feels more personal. You convince yourself that because it's just drawings or animations, it's not as harmful as watching industrial content. But in reality, your brain is still reacting the same way. The attachment grows stronger, and your cravings for more extreme content keep pushing you further down the rabbit hole. Number 3, doujinshis and Japanese mindset. Now we've got to get real about doujinshi, those fan-made manga or comics that often feature explicit content. It's a huge part of the anime fandom, and it's where things can get seriously twisted. Doujinshi might start off as harmless fan art, but once you dive in, you quickly realize that a lot of it is hypersexualized and features extreme themes. Stuff that can be really disturbing when you think about it. But the worst part is that the Japanese culture surrounding anime has normalized a lot of this. Doujinshi taps into your addiction to novelty. You get bored with regular content, so you start exploring the stranger, darker sides of anime. The problem is that it takes things to the extreme. You end up consuming content that's way more graphic than anything you'd find on the internet. And over time, you become numb to it. What used to shock you now feels normal, and you keep searching for something even more intense to get that dopamine hit. And because these characters and scenarios are so far removed from reality, you don't feel the same guilt or shame that you might feel after watching industrial content. Your brain is tricking you into thinking, it's just drawings, it's not real, it's fine. But it's not, and deep down, you know it. And that leads us to the next point. Number 4, the guilt-free trap. Guilt is a big part of why people want to quit pornography. After a session of watching industrial content, you often feel gross, ashamed, or just down about yourself. But with anime content, a lot of that guilt just isn't there. It's like having an addiction without any of the warning signs. You don't feel bad after watching it, so you convince yourself that it's not an issue. But over time, it takes a bigger and bigger toll on your mental health, your ability to form real connections, and your overall happiness. And since there's no guilt, there's no real incentive to quit. You end up staying hooked much longer because you're not facing the same emotional consequences that come with regular content. It becomes a comfortable, guilt-free escape that's even harder to break away from. Number 5, anime characters designed to keep you hooked. If you've ever played Japanese gacha games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These games are designed to keep you addicted, not just to the gameplay, but to the characters. They're built to be as appealing as possible, with the perfect mix of fantasy, cuteness, and just the right amount of fan service to keep you hooked. They're carefully crafted to tap into your subconscious desires. You get emotionally attached to the characters, and before you know it, that emotional attachment turns into a sexual one. You find yourself looking for fan arts to see these characters in a more explicit way. It's like these games and anime shows were designed to make you relapse. The characters are engineered to keep you coming back for more. Whether it's through their appearance, their personality, or the fantasy they represent, these characters become a trigger for your addiction, pushing you deeper into that vicious cycle without you even realizing it. And the more you engage with them, the harder it becomes to quit. Why? Because fantasy relationships are easy. They don't require the messy, complicated aspects of a real human connection. Real relationships take effort, compromise, communication, vulnerability. But when you're wrapped up in anime, these characters are perfect. They say the right things, they look the way you want, and they're always available at the click of a button. Over time, you start preferring the fantasy over the real thing because the fantasy is effortless. But here's the problem. This makes it even harder for you to form real, meaningful connections in your life. As you spend more time in this fantasy world, the thought of dating someone in real life seems less appealing. You convince yourself that it's better to stay single, and porn becomes your substitute for intimacy. It's a vicious cycle. The more disconnected you become from real relationships, the deeper you fall into addiction. Your brain starts associating sexual pleasure exclusively with fantasy, until you lose the desire to even seek out a real partner. Now, I know that we've just talked about all the ways anime can feed your addiction and make you feel miserable, but you're not forced to totally quit. Really, you're not. But the reality is, if you're not careful, this fandom that brings you joy can also keep you trapped in a cycle of misery. You can still enjoy anime, but without letting it control you. And in a few weeks, once you break free from your addiction and hopefully find a purpose, you'll realize that life is a lot more fulfilling in the real world than it ever could be in a fantasy. You'll realize how irrelevant pornography is, how silly you were for thinking otherwise, and it's totally possible to appreciate an anime without feeding any of your demons. If you like this video, you can hit that like button. And if there's something you want to share or want me to talk about, tell me in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to bully your addiction, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong, talk to you soon.